cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
Ah, yes, some things change, some things stay the same. It is that time of the week, a time where we are joined in the studio by David Whiting, Melbourne solicitor, who can answer all your legal questions. Hello.
Hello.
What do you think of your new, arrival music?
I'm very gracious and defer to my host.
Virginia, yes, exactly. Right, okay, very good. So you know exactly which side of the bread you're
absolutely. So I really like
that.
the Perry Mason one. I've listened to the Tex Perkins track a couple of times, and I can't find anything else. They tell me there's a Johnny Cash track I should listen to.
Oh, well, you've got something to think
about.
So
at which stage in the new year I can make a submission.
Yes, that is the best that you can do, is make a submission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
1300 222 774 is the number if you would like to talk to David, or you can text 0437 774 774. And David, you didn't have any homework, but there has been a little bit going on, hasn't there?
I'm homework free this week. To me, it's Royal Commission week, if you like. The courts don't technically close till Friday, but things have moved a little bit quieter. And there's Simon Overland gave evidence at the Royal Commission into police handling of informers, and he's back in the box today. So it will be interesting to see what he says. Interesting things like, for some reason, people stop keeping diaries.
And why would that be?
Well, you either at some point don't want to have a record of what was discussed, and in a sense, if you don't have a diary, then it's a nice open field. If you do have
there's
a diary,
nothing to subpoena. So.
No, and then there's the interesting questions. Well, what did you put in it, and why did you put that in it, and why is there a blank there? And if you don't have a diary, you don't have to answer any of those questions.
No.
So.
I found the comment that he was not aware that Nicola Gobbo was informing on her clients, because I'm really confused as to why else she'd be signed up as an informer.
Yes, well, it would seem to me it was those connections that were most valuable to the police. Therefore, they're the ones I would be interested in. Yes.
Oh, well, much more will come out of that, and I guess they shut down for a little bit of summer. Do you know how long the Royal Commission will close down for?
Well, the courts are closed until different courts are closed. The Magistrates Court comes back on the 6th, County back on the 14th, and the Supreme Court's back on the 28th. So, but I would have thought probably the end of January you can expect to have more sessions from the Royal Commission. Yeah.
1300 222 774 is the number. Marjorie's joined us from Mornington. Good morning, Marjorie.
Oh, good morning, Ali and David. Thank you for taking my call. My question's pretty straightforward, I think. My husband passed away recently, and I'm the executor and only beneficiary in his will. We have joint bank accounts and joint ownership of the house. So I want to know who I need to present the will to, and do I need to apply for probate?
Well, Marjorie, what assets were in your husband's name alone?
One car.
Oh, that's a piece of cake. The car can be transferred to you. There is a deceased estate pack on the Vic Roads website. Effectively, it's a certified copy of the will or a letter from the lawyer that says Marjorie is the sole beneficiary of the estate. She's entitled to the car, let's transfer it. And if it's coming to you, my recollection is that they don't require a roadworthy to be undertaken. If it's going to someone else, or it's leaving the family, not going to someone other than you, then a roadworthy will be required.
Okay.
House jointly owned?
Yes.
Then that passes to you outside the will.
Yes.
Did he have any bank accounts in his own name?
No.
Did he have any superannuation?
Yes, and I've been in touch with that organisation, and that's under control.
Okay, then no, you don't need a grant of probate.
Okay.
Certainly the way you've described it to me, you don't, so...
And do I need to present the will to anyone?
No. In terms of the things that are jointly owned, what you really need to do is prove your husband's death.
Okay.
So about 6 weeks after the interment, the Birth, Deaths and Marriages will send you a death certificate.
Yeah.
You go and get a dozen photocopies, and you go down to the police station or the pharmacist and you get certified copies done. Mm-hmm. And you take them to the bank and they will transfer the bank accounts. Title, look, I'm deep down fairly mean, Marjorie. It's going to cost you several $100s to get the property in your name alone. So I probably wouldn't do it until you need to do something. So if you decide that you're going to sell or
Then
borrow
Margie would
against
have
the property,
to do that.
then you need to do it then. But if you do it then, you're going to do it at a time when there's some cash being freed up.
Okay.
All right, so don't need to. It's nice if you do, but you certainly don't need to.
So if you don't need to do that, David, what about joint bank accounts? Is there an imperative to change that?
Well, you do want the bank to know that you're the only person on the account. So what you're really doing is just simply saying to the bank, here's evidence that the bank account is now mine alone. So you would cancel her husband's credit card,
cards and all that sort of thing.
You would remove his signature from the database. You would do all of those things. Okay. So you're actually helping prevent some fraud along the way.
Yeah, but the actual account can stay as it is.
Every bank has a slightly different process.
Okay.
Most of them will allow you to keep the bank account and they just change the name on the account.
Beautiful.
Right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marjorie.
That's me a great deal. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ali.
Marjorie,
have a very happy Christmas.
Same to you. We wish you all the best. Caroline in Melbourne. Hi, Caroline.
Hello.
What did you want to ask David?
Very quite emotional. So I hope I can express how I feel. We've got a beloved dog, and my husband visited one of his relatives in Montrose. We live in the country as well, so he housed our dog in the backyard in Montrose. Unfortunately, our dog escaped the backyard, even despite the fact he was checking on him often. And he managed to enter someone else's property, like a little yard, and killed a sheep and injured two others. So he, of course, was impounded. The owner of the sheep was surprised at how he was able to be called and kept under control. And even one of her daughters yelled at him, and he was scared. You know, he's 5 years old. This has never happened before.
Yep.
Anyway, so the ranger checked on him. Took him in. We paid for an animal behaviourist to come in to assess him, and they said he's a completely, beautiful dog. He's harmless. He's actually a big sook. But the council worker, I'm not even going to name obviously, in the Yarra Ranges, decided to push for extermination.
Yes.
So we, of course, did what we possibly could, and even the sheep owner wrote letters to the CEO of the Yarra Ranges to say we do not want the dog
put down. Yep.
Because he's a beautiful boy.
But it's an application to the Magistrates Court, isn't it, Caroline?
We've done that. We've gone through the Magistrates Court, and the beautiful magistrate said straight out, he's not a dangerous dog. You can pay money. Your fine is to pay for the animal aid, which are volunteers.
Yes.
And then we chose a charity local to us that we put money towards.
So what's the problem?
The problem is the council worker decided to sack the lawyer that was presenting the Yarra Ranges.
Yes.
And he's now employed a firm, leading legal firm. And
but Caroline, you've been to court and there's been an order made, hasn't there?
That's right, but he wants to push for him to be a dangerous dog now.
A declaration that he's a dangerous dog?
Declaration of a dangerous dog, and he's still in the pound. It happened in October.
And why is he still in the pound? Because of this application by council?
That's it, because of the application by council. But this one particular person. So everybody else is against it, even the lady who owns it.
Well, that's, in a sense... the council worker has a particular view, and we have a court system which is slow, at which those propositions get tested. So I can't get the council worker to change his or her mind, and that's a decision that the bylaws or enforcement officers are making. And so the matter will go to court, back to the magistrates' court on that question, and with any luck, you'll get exactly the same magistrate.
Well, let's hope, because it's been since October, a beloved dog, and I'm doing two jobs at the moment. Is
there a process, Caroline, where you can get the dog released while the application is pending? Do you know?
Well, there was a mention during the last proceedings that there was a loophole that said they may hold the dog, and we could possibly try and see if we could, because we've got a very safe yard. He has never escaped. We've had him for 5 years and he's not escaped.
But your process, Caroline, the difficulty is that you are in the process, and you need to follow the process. You have a look at the legislation and see where there's a loophole there, and you're stuck. I can't help you to If that's a position that the council takes, then you...
So you have to
that's
wait
where
until
you're
the
at.
council has taken it back to the court and that process is
But
complete.
presumably they've issued and there's a date set or what?
Do you have a date, Caroline?
Not yet, no. The hearing was just last Thursday, so it's all...
And what was the hearing last Thursday? A directions hearing as to when we're going to exchange evidence and when it comes back to hearing. What was that last week about?
The last week was whether they were going to put him down.
Okay. So then in a sense, and you've now just got notice they're going to start this again.
That's exactly right, yep.
Well, I suppose that if I was going back to Yarra Rangers, I would make the point that you don't live in their municipality. And that, it simply ceases to be an issue. And if they want to refer it to the municipality where they live, then they can. But it would appear to me that they're spending a great deal of money on an issue that in the longer term just doesn't affect them at all.
That's exactly right. I've been pushing for that. And we live in the country as well, too. So it's not as if he's a city dog.
There are some people who will tell you that Montrose is not the country.
Caroline, good luck.
Sorry.
That is a really gosh, I've not that situation. It seems amazing if you've got the people who lost sheep saying we don't want the dog put down. If you've got a magistrate saying dog is not dangerous, it seems not such a complicated issue.
Well, except there is a process for saying it's a different section of the legislation where you're actually asking for an order that this be declared a dangerous dog, which means it needs to be confined and all sorts of things like that.
I've got a text from Alan here about, we were talking earlier, Marjorie rang and she recently lost her husband, about closing down bank accounts and that sort of thing. Alan says that I kept my joint bank account after my wife passed away. I informed the bank of her passing, but 20 years later they're still offering her credit cards. One day I might accept, he says.
Dangerous.
Jane in Bendigo, what did you want to ask?
Oh, hello, David. Yes, I've just got a question about quality of service, really. And the story was that I had a pump put at my property, and it wasn't fit for the purpose that it was put on for.
So what kind of pump were you putting in, Jane?
It was a DAB water pump pumping up from the dam.
Okay,
So it was
yes.
a really long distance. Yeah, anyway, so the pump that was put in, that was installed, it couldn't do the job at all. It couldn't even pull any water up, actually. It just overheated and turned off. And I got a second opinion from another company, and they did all the proper examination, and they told me it needed a stronger pump. So they came, I rang the first installer. He came and said that it was absolutely crazy. His pump was perfect. Anyway, he took his pump away. So I got a new pump installed, the right one, 18 months, brilliant. But the problem I've got now is that I refused to pay the labour costs for the first installer. I should have really, in hindsight, but he didn't provide any service. And Consumer Affairs basically have said now that I need to...
Well, what you need to do, Jane, I don't know what you've already done, but you would need to go to VCAT, essentially for an order that says, I don't owe this bloke any money.
Yes, they suggested that because he sent it to the debt collector to get the labour costs,
Yes.
and Consumer Affairs said go to VCAT, basically. But I also spoke to the consumer legal team, and they
Yes.
said I should pay the money and then go to VCAT. They said that's the correct procedure.
You can follow whatever procedure you like, but it's 18 months and they're still hanging around. What's the installation charge? What's the labour charge?
He's asking for $522.
It's a tough call, Jane. I mean, at $522, you actually wonder whether it's worth paying to move on.
Well, that's
Because you're going to have to apply your own time to your VCAT application. You're going to need to pay an application fee at VCAT.
I actually do agree with that, and my children also have said, Mum, move on, but I've actually since heard that this first installer has done it to so many other people, old people in the area.
Well, it's not going to make any difference to whether you succeed or fail, whether you're right or wrong on that assertion.
Is there someone that Jane, she can pay the money, but then report the installer? I mean, if that's the sort of thing that she's hearing about.
You can make a complaint to Consumer Affairs, but it's going to get buried. It won't be reported, so there'll be no...
I've done all that, but they also suggested maybe social media. Am I allowed to not name names, but just put on social media? Because on his site, there's nowhere that I can write a review. There's nowhere that I can tell or tell my experience to other possible consumers.
Well, I can understand that. He probably doesn't want that. There are lots of businesses that don't allow for reviews on the site.
But what are Jane's rights in terms of being able to...
Well, you have to ask for $522, is it likely that this bloke will ever sue? And I would have thought
It's not the money.
unlikely, right? And so, on one view, do absolutely nothing and there's a very good chance that this person will just go away because the cost of recovering $522 will be too much. But, if she wants to have the hearing that I don't owe this person any money because he didn't provide any value, then you go to VCAT and you can ask for an order at VCAT for them to either declare how much money you do in fact owe him or that you don't owe him any money at all.
So, Jane, you have to make a decision about how much it is worth to you. Thank you for your call. Hamish in Ballarat. Hi, Hamish.
Good morning, Ali and David. I've just got a query regarding receiving text messages about once per month from Madden's lawyers saying please contact them. I've looked them up. They're a debt collection agency.
Well, they're actually a law firm in Warrnambool, but yes.
Right.
They're probably acting for someone who wants some debts collected. Yep.
Yes, I was just wondering the legitimacy of receiving only via text message. I've looked up and people have said, there's scams and all sorts of other business there, but if you don't receive it in writing via mail, can it still be...
Have you moved, Hamish?
No.
No, I can see no. I mean, I've had lots of dealings with Maddens over the years. I have no problem with them at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was just going to say too, if you've paid also the bill, and then perhaps if you were to receive a invoice following that for the fee of the debt collector as well.
The debt collector can't give you a bill.
No.
Unless they sue, you can't get extra costs added. There was a lawyer in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne who got into a great deal of trouble for asking for video rental fees plus legals.
Right. And my concern is too, because I've not followed the pathway of the link that they've provided in that text message, that they wouldn't be accruing a cost for every text message they send. So I haven't seen the agreement giving rise to the debt and whether there are on costs which are included or not included. Let's assume there are none. You are not incurring any further costs until they sue you, but why would you not be trying to resolve the debt? I suppose just not wanting to open up at the attachment, see if it's...
Well, then don't. Go to the person who you know you owe the money to.
Yes. I think... I've paid it 6 months ago, the bill that I think if it was linked to that.
Well, then ring Maddens. Ask them.
Right. Yeah.
Go to the source, so to speak. Hamish, thank you. 1300 222 774 is the number, and... this has actually never happened before, and I reckon it's a sign of Christmas. There's actually a couple of spare lines. I think that maybe people's legal disputes become less important as Christmas appears. So if you've got a legal question, do give David a call. Gina in Keilor Downs, what's your question?
Hello to you both. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Gina.
It's regarding my phone, my mobile phone. I purchased a phone and it was still under warranty, and ever since I purchased it, I've had problems with the phone. And I don't know if I'm allowed to name the company.
I'd rather you didn't, just in case.
I won't. And so each time they said that they'll repair it, and each time I got it back, there was either another issue with it or the repair wasn't done. And every time I left the phone there, they backed up the data on my behalf because I'm pretty techno bad.
Yes.
And then they would retrieve the data for me when I got my phone back. And I'd have my phone for 2 to 3 weeks with no compensation, so I had to use a spare phone in the interim. Then on the last few times actually, I kept complaining about the same issue, that have the phone for a number of weeks, I'd get it back and there'd be no change to it. Finally, and I'd be in the store for like 6 hours at a time as well.
Yep.
Finally, they acknowledged that there was a problem, because each time, I'd send emails to the company saying, can I speak to the technician who's fixing the phone, because I can explain to them what tests to do to see exactly what the issue is. It was never given.
So where are we at now, Gina?
Okay, so where we're at is finally they are in store, they acknowledged and they saw the problem for themselves. The store manager came out and acknowledged the phone.
Gina, where are we now?
They
Otherwise it'll be taking you
phone.
6 hours. Hmm?
All right, they replaced my phone, and what they did, I said, okay, can you on the final time of leaving my phone, they backed up the data, and they said we have to leave it here, and again, and we have to back the data again.
So Gina,
sorry, which bit have you cut out, Gina? You don't appear to have cut any of this out.
Do you have your phone back? What is the issue?
Okay, the issue is on the final, before I got my new phone, they said I have to leave my phone there. They acknowledged the phone was faulty and they were going to give me another phone. And they said we have to back up your data again.
Gina, what's the issue?
The issue is when they did the second backup of my data, they actually backed up an empty phone and lost all my data.
Yep.
So the issue there is I have interviews, I have photos of my deceased father before and after his passing, the same as my auntie. I write for a magazine, all my interviews are on there.
So they've lost all of your data on the phone.
Lost all my data.
So what can Gina do? Gina, let's ask David what you can do.
Gina, were you not able to back up any of your own data?
I didn't know how, but I left it. They got their own. They go, we've got our own technicians. We'll back it up for you and bring it back.
Right. So, then you would have an action for damages against the company for failing to back up your data. The difficulty that you have is assessing what it's worth.
Okay.
All right. But it's also quite possible if they've backed up your data in the past, they may have those backups as well.
So you could always maybe go back to that. Gina, thank you. It's a very long and tortured issue there. Spending 6 hours in the shop would just be too much for me. I would have moved on by then.
Absolutely. I bought a new phone.
Yes, indeed. Chris in Ivanhoe. Hi, Chris.
Oh, hello. Thank you for taking my call, David. My call has been prompted by a story in today's Age. I won't go into specifics. It's by Richard Baker.
Yes.
Concerning abuse in institutions. And my question, I've been involved in child protection for many years. My question is, how on earth was the organisation allegedly responsible for the abuse, the Catholic Church, allowed to use the county court buildings for their own so-called investigations and hearings? I mean, would I be allowed to hire the county court?
Yes. So, Chris, here's the way that governments choose to fund some buildings, and it's called BOOT, Build, Own, Operate and Transfer. All right? Now, my understanding in relation to the county court is that it was built by a private contractor, it is managed by a private contractor, but the court complex was built with long-term court needs in mind, and the end result is there were a significant number of empty spaces that were not immediately required for the justice system in Victoria. So the arrangement that was entered into between the state and the operator was that they would be able to rent out those surplus spaces for things like mediations and arbitrations and the like. So, I mean, that's the issue. While you walk in and it says it's the county court building, certainly when the arrangements were entered into, the arrangements were on the basis that if you wanted to hire a room, and I'm quite sure they look at your proper purpose and all the rest of it, you could hire a room. Does that make sense?
Yes, to a degree it does, but my concern about this is what message does this send to victims who are trying to...
But that's a decision that was made by the state. We've got a building, I'm plucking these figures out of nowhere. Let's say it's got 60 courtrooms and the administration of the county court says, I need 38. I've now got 22 courtrooms.
And I have been in the county court, I have to say, relatively recently, and it's...
mammoth.
And a bit empty. I mean, I know people are in court, but there's absolutely no way every single one of those spaces is being used.
No, but then, and they've built for the future. So the question would be, well, we could build it for that many courtrooms and we could keep them empty and the government could own and run the building.
Chris, is your concern that it creates an aura around something that's happening in a courtroom, even though it's not a courtroom?
My concern is the message that it gives to the victims.
In my mind, it gives the message like an imprimatur that this is okay, that the process is appropriate, and it's under the auspices of the state, and it's clearly not. It's just a rented room.
Clearly, that this imprimatur which was given was completely inappropriate because so much has been exposed.
I understand your proposition.
And do you agree, David? Do you think that these places should not be rented out?
Yeah, my preference would be that there be a government building for government purposes and not, your hearing today will be in courtroom 57, but it's not a courtroom.
It's not a courtroom.
Yeah.
Look, let's just squeeze in one more. Ray in Sandringham, you've got a fairly, I think, straightforward question. Hi, Ray.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking the call, Dave and Ali. The question is, essentially I had a house which was private sale that I was seeking to purchase and put a deposit on the house and in the end requested over the weekend access to the house for purposes of due diligence to see what sort of repairs and maintenance and renovations would be needed.
Yes.
The real estate agent got to the vendors and said, would you give permission for access? Access was denied, and I have that in writing. The architect and the builder said that makes us suspicious, that there's something that we would find. They then did a sort of a costing based on what information was available on photos and on the internet, and the figure that came out was quite high, so we elected to take the cooling off period option.
So what's the question, Ray?
So the question was the amount that was taken was the correct amount under a penalty for cooling off. However, as due diligence access wasn't...
let's get this right. You've signed a contract to purchase the property.
Yes.
All right. Now, was there anything in the contract about due diligence?
No.
Rightio. So not allowing due diligence is really neither here nor there. You bought what you signed for.
Okay.
All right.
The second question is, was there a requirement for the real estate agent to make me aware of this potential to have...
it's on the same page of the contract that you sign your name.
Right, but is there some consumer information that should be provided by the real estate agent or not?
There will have been a due diligence checklist included with the contract documentation.
Right.
And the reference to the cooling off period and the fee that can be payable, which is the greater of 0.2% or $100.
Correct.
It appears on the page where you sign your name.
Right.
Now, I think the issue was that you thought that you would have had the opportunity of buying the property, then reflecting on your purchase and having a look at the property and then making up our mind about whether you were going to buy it.
Yes.
Well, either you bought it or you didn't. I mean, it's not a change of mind. It's not to get further in. It's to allow a change of mind.
Yep.
So what you should have done, if anything,
Yes.
was that you should have come along and made it conditional on a building report.
Right. Or finance.
Depends on the amount of finance. I mean, if you're buying $1 million property and you want to borrow $200,000, not hard to get. No?
No, it was conditional on finance, though. And so the issue is that with finance for the necessary maintenance and renovations, it would have been over the amount that the bank was willing to lend.
Yeah, but you've used the cooling off period. That's the end of the discussion. If it had failed, but your issue really is that you seem to think that if you buy a property, you've got the opportunity, after having signed for it, you've got the opportunity to go in and do a due diligence, and you just don't under the normal contract.
You need to do that stuff before you sign on the dotted line. David Whiting, have a wonderful holiday season. It's Boxing Day it's Christmas Eve next Tuesday.
Christmas
so you're not
Eve,
going
and
to be
I'm not coming anywhere near
No,
this
you're
place.
not coming anywhere near this place as much as you love it. Thank you so much for everything this year, and I know that you're going to be back next year. You'll make those submissions about your theme song. Good luck with that. I'd be happy to go in a bat for you if necessary. But have a wonderful holiday season, and thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. You too.
David Whiting there.